Introduction. The day you began to question everything. What if the greatest obstacle standing between you and a profoundly different life isn't your lack of knowledge, but your certainty? Pause for a moment. Think about every belief you carry today about success, happiness, love, purpose, money, education, spirituality, society, even yourself. Now ask a question that few people ever dare to ask. How many of those beliefs did you actually discover for yourself? And how many simply became familiar because you heard them often enough? This audiobook is not here to give you another philosophy. The world already has enough philosophies. It already has enough opinions, enough experts, enough gurus, enough ideological battles, enough voices demanding that you believe exactly what they believe. This book has no interest in adding one more. Instead, it offers something far more unsettling and far more liberating. It offers you a different way of seeing. Because every transformation begins with a new way of looking at old things. Most people spend their entire lives trying to improve the content of their thinking. Very few ever learn to examine the process of thinking itself. That is where this journey begins. Not with answers. With observation. Not with blind belief. With courageous inquiry. Not with rebellion for its own sake. But with the quiet determination to discover what remains true after every illusion has fallen away. This is not an easy path. The mind prefers certainty because certainty feels safe. Questions feel dangerous. Questions shake identities. Questions disturb traditions. Questions expose comfortable illusions. Yet history has always moved forward because someone, somewhere, became brave enough to ask a question everyone else was afraid to ask. Every scientific revolution began with one. Every philosophical breakthrough emerged from one. Every personal awakening started with one simple realization. Perhaps what I have always assumed is not the whole story. Throughout your life, countless invisible architects have helped build the structure of your mind. Parents, teachers, friends, books, television, social media, religious traditions, political movements, cultural expectations. None of them are entirely right. None of them are entirely wrong. Each has handed you a few pieces of a puzzle. But no one has given you the complete picture. The remarkable thing is that most people never notice the puzzle is incomplete. They inherit conclusions before they inherit curiosity. They memorize answers before they discover how to question. And without realizing it, they begin living inside a house designed by other people's assumptions. This audiobook is an invitation to step outside that house. Not to destroy it. To examine its foundations. Some walls deserve strengthening. Others deserve windows. A few may need to disappear altogether. Only then can something genuinely your own begin to emerge. Along this journey, we will explore questions that rarely receive honest attention. Why are human beings so easily fascinated by certainty? Why do intelligent people surrender independent thought to crowds, ideologies, or charismatic personalities? Why does comfort sometimes produce emptiness instead of fulfillment? Why do civilizations rise in creativity only to become trapped by their own success? Why do we fear letting go of outdated beliefs even when they quietly limit our lives? And perhaps most importantly, what does authentic inner freedom actually feel like? Not as an abstract idea, as a lived experience. But before we can answer these questions, we must first uncover something hidden beneath them all. There is an invisible force shaping nearly every decision you make. It influences what you believe, what you fear, what you desire, what you defend, even what you call yourself. Most people never notice it. Once you do, you will never see your life the same way again. This is not a book that asks for agreement. Agreement is easy. Awareness is difficult. If, at times, these pages challenge your assumptions, that is not a flaw in the journey. It is the journey. Do not rush to accept what you hear. Do not rush to reject it either. Hold every idea gently. Test it against your own experience. Observe your own mind as carefully as you observe these words. Because the greatest discoveries in this audiobook will not happen inside these chapters. They will happen inside you. Imagine standing at the entrance of an immense, ancient observatory. Its doors have remained closed for years. Dust covers its windows. Most people walk past without ever wondering what lies inside. Tonight, for the first time, the doors begin to open. Beyond them is not another belief system, not another ideology, not another promise of effortless transformation. Beyond them lies an expedition. An exploration into the architecture of the human mind, the hidden mechanics of belief, the subtle illusions that shape civilizations, and the extraordinary freedom waiting beyond borrowed certainty. The path ahead will not always be comfortable. But if you continue, chapter by chapter, question by question, you may discover that the greatest revolution is not one that changes the world around you. It is the one that quietly transforms the world within. And once that revolution begins, nothing is ever seen in quite the same way again. So take a deep breath. Leave your conclusions at the door. Bring only your curiosity. The journey begins now. Chapter 1. The Marketplace of Illusions. The first deception is rarely the lie itself. It is our longing to believe. Long before anyone promises extraordinary powers, the human mind has already begun searching for them. It searches in moments of uncertainty, in seasons of loss, in sleepless nights when tomorrow feels heavier than today. It looks for shortcuts through suffering, hidden doors to success, invisible hands that might rearrange reality without demanding that we transform ourselves. This longing is ancient. It changes its clothing with every generation, but its heartbeat remains the same. Centuries ago, people crossed mountains in search of mysterious sages who claimed to command unseen forces. Today, the same journey happens through glowing screens, viral videos, celebrity influencers, miracle investments, overnight success formulas, and charismatic personalities who promise certainty in a world overflowing with confusion. The stage has changed. The audience has not. And that realization reveals a question far more important than whether miracles exist. Why are we so eager to believe them? The answer is not as obvious as it first appears. Imagine entering a magnificent city at twilight. Its streets are filled with dazzling lights. Every building competes for your attention. Brilliant signs flash from every direction. This is the answer. This changes everything. Your search ends here. Some travelers wander carefully, studying maps and asking questions. Others run toward the brightest light. Not because it is true. Because brightness is easier to notice than quiet wisdom. Human consciousness works much the same way. The extraordinary captures attention long before the authentic earns trust. Yet this is where the story becomes truly interesting. The universe never designed truth to compete through spectacle. It whispers. Illusion performs. And many people spend their entire lives applauding performances while overlooking the quiet voice that could have transformed them forever. There is an uncomfortable truth most of us avoid. When life becomes uncertain, our standards for evidence often become weaker instead of stronger. A struggling entrepreneur becomes vulnerable to anyone promising effortless wealth. Someone facing illness may cling to any voice offering guaranteed healing. A lonely heart can mistake emotional intensity for genuine connection. A frightened mind rarely asks difficult questions. It simply wants relief. There is nothing shameful about that. Pain naturally searches for comfort. But comfort and truth are not always companions. Sometimes they walk together. Sometimes they travel in opposite directions. Learning the difference may be one of the most valuable skills a human being can develop. Real transformation almost never begins with excitement. It begins with honesty. Honesty asks questions that entertainment prefers to avoid. Why do certain promises feel irresistible? Why do crowds create confidence? Why does repetition often sound like proof? Why are we more persuaded by confidence than by evidence? Most people never stop long enough to investigate these questions. Instead, they become collectors of certainty. They gather beliefs the way tourists collect souvenirs. Each new idea feels meaningful. Each new teacher feels extraordinary. Each new system appears final. Yet beneath this endless collection lies a silent fear. What if none of these things change me? That fear drives another search. Another promise. Another destination. The cycle continues. Consider an architect designing a bridge. No one would trust a structure simply because its blueprint looked beautiful. Steel must carry weight. Foundations must survive storms. Reality eventually examines every claim. Human wisdom should be held to the same standard. An inspiring speech means little if it cannot survive ordinary life. A powerful philosophy must still guide someone through disappointment. It must remain steady during failure. It must offer clarity when applause disappears. Otherwise, it is decoration rather than direction. This distinction separates emotional excitement from lasting growth. Many experiences feel profound. Far fewer quietly reshape the architecture of a person's character. Here is another mystery. People often confuse surprise with significance. If something is unexpected, they assume it must be meaningful. Yet fireworks and sunrise produce very different experiences. One demands attention through noise. The other transforms the world through consistency. Which one truly changes the landscape? Real wisdom resembles sunrise. It rarely announces itself. It simply illuminates what was already there. That is why genuine growth often feels almost invisible while it is happening. Days pass. Weeks pass. Then one morning you notice something astonishing. The situations that once controlled your emotions no longer possess the same power. Fear speaks more quietly. Comparison loses its grip. Resentment becomes difficult to sustain. Nothing dramatic happened. Everything changed. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all. The deepest transformations cannot always be displayed. They cannot be packaged into dramatic demonstrations or compressed into impressive stories. You recognize them in quieter moments. When criticism no longer steals your peace. When success no longer defines your worth. When uncertainty no longer terrifies you. When compassion becomes stronger than pride. These moments rarely attract headlines. Yet they reshape entire lives. A person who remains calm in chaos performs a far greater wonder than someone who merely attracts attention. A person who forgives after deep betrayal accomplishes something that no performance can imitate. Someone who chooses integrity when dishonesty would be easier reveals a strength invisible to the crowd but unmistakable to the soul. Perhaps the greatest miracles are not events that suspend the laws of nature. Perhaps they are moments when human consciousness rises above its oldest fears. If this is true, then an even more fascinating question begins to emerge. If authentic transformation is so quiet, why do so few people recognize it while so many chase its louder imitations? To answer that, we must journey deeper into the hidden architecture of belief itself. Because what shapes our lives is rarely what we see. It is what we silently agree to believe. And that invisible agreement changes everything. Chapter 2. The Mind's Invisible Compass. There is a strange mystery hidden inside every human mind. The harder we push against certain thoughts, the stronger they seem to become. Try, for just 1 minute, not to imagine a lighthouse standing alone in the middle of a stormy sea. You almost certainly saw it. Not because you wanted to. Because attention follows resistance. The mind has a peculiar habit. It quietly turns toward whatever it believes it must avoid. Like a compass disturbed by a nearby magnet, it begins pointing in the very direction it hoped to escape. Most people spend their lives fighting fear without realizing that fear has become the center of their attention. And what occupies attention gradually begins to shape reality. This single insight explains more about human suffering than most people ever discover. But it also opens a much deeper mystery. If the mind naturally moves toward what it resists, can we ever become truly free? A young sailor once asked an old navigator how he managed to guide his ship through dangerous reefs year after year without running aground. The old man smiled. "I never steer away from the rocks," he replied. "I steer toward the open water." The young sailor frowned. "But isn't that the same thing?" "No," the navigator answered. "One keeps the danger alive in your imagination. The other keeps your destination alive in your heart." That distinction changed the sailor's life. It may change yours as well. Many people organize their lives around avoiding failure instead of creating meaning, avoiding loneliness instead of building love, avoiding criticism instead of expressing truth, avoiding uncertainty instead of discovering possibility. Without noticing, they allow fear to become the architect of every decision. The destination disappears. Only the obstacles remain. Modern life quietly trains us to live this way. News feeds compete for our attention by amplifying danger. Social media convinces us that everyone else is moving faster. Financial pressure whispers that we are already behind. Our calendars overflow. Our minds never stop negotiating tomorrow. Yet beneath all this noise lies an invisible question. What if I am not enough? Few people say these words aloud. Almost everyone carries them somewhere inside. And because they do, they spend enormous energy trying to silence the question instead of understanding it. But unanswered questions rarely disappear. They simply change their disguises. Here is something few people recognize. The greatest prison is not built from walls. It is built from unconscious assumptions. Imagine wearing a pair of glasses since childhood without ever realizing they are on your face. Everything you see passes through those lenses. You call it reality. You never suspect that reality has been colored by invisible filters. Beliefs work in exactly this way. When someone believes success always belongs to other people, opportunities become invisible. When another believes trust is dangerous, every friendship feels uncertain. When someone secretly believes peace must be earned through endless achievement, rest begins to feel like guilt. Life itself has not changed. The lens has. And the lens quietly creates an entirely different world. This is why authentic inquiry matters more than blind certainty. Curiosity opens windows. Certainty often locks doors. There is a profound difference between saying, "I already know," and asking, "What have I never noticed?" One closes the journey. The other begins it. The universe seems to reveal itself most generously to those who are willing to remain students. Not students who collect endless information. Students who remain available to surprise. Because every meaningful breakthrough first arrives disguised as a question. History remembers remarkable inventions. But the greatest discoveries did not begin with answers. They began with someone refusing to accept appearances. An explorer wondered whether another continent existed beyond the horizon. A scientist questioned what everyone assumed to be obvious. An artist imagined colors no one else could yet see. Transformation always begins with a question courageous enough to disturb comfort. The same is true inwardly. The most important question is rarely, "What should I believe?" It is, "How clearly can I observe?" Observation frees. Blind belief merely changes costumes. Many people search for purpose the way tourists search for famous landmarks. They expect a dramatic sign, a perfect moment, an unmistakable voice. But purpose often arrives differently. It grows quietly while someone learns to become fully present. It deepens each time integrity is chosen over convenience. It expands whenever compassion becomes stronger than self-interest. The extraordinary is usually hidden inside the ordinary. Only a patient eye can recognize it. There is another misunderstanding that shapes modern life. People often assume that outer success automatically produces inner abundance. Sometimes it does. Often it does not. Imagine constructing the tallest building in a city while neglecting its foundation. From a distance it appears magnificent. Inside, tiny fractures continue spreading through every floor. Many lives are built this way. Promotions without peace. Recognition without fulfillment. Achievement without belonging. The world applauds the skyline. Only the builder hears the quiet creaking underneath. This does not mean material success lacks value. Comfort can create space for reflection. Security can free creative energy. Prosperity can become fertile soil where generosity, learning, and wisdom flourish. But soil is not the garden. It only makes the garden possible. What eventually grows depends upon the seeds we choose to plant. Perhaps this explains why two people can possess identical opportunities yet experience completely different lives. One uses abundance to expand awareness. The other uses abundance to expand distraction. One becomes freer. The other becomes busier. External circumstances open doors. Inner consciousness decides which room to enter. As our journey continues, an even more intriguing question emerges. If our deepest limitations are not created by the world but by the invisible patterns through which we interpret it, who placed those patterns there? And more importantly, can they be rewritten? The answer waits beyond the next doorway, where we will begin exploring the silent stories every human mind inherits long before it ever learns to think for itself. Chapter 3. Beyond Comfort, the Second Journey. There comes a moment in every civilization when success quietly asks a dangerous question. Now what? Most people imagine that this question belongs only to philosophers. It doesn't. It belongs to every entrepreneur who finally sells the company he spent 20 years building. It belongs to the athlete who wins the championship only to wake up the next morning feeling strangely empty. It belongs to the student who reaches the career they dreamed of, only to discover that achievement and fulfillment are not identical twins. The world celebrates the finish line. But the human spirit is rarely satisfied by arrival alone. Something inside us was never searching merely for comfort. It was searching for meaning. Yet this is where the journey becomes truly fascinating. Because meaning never appears where we expect it. Imagine climbing a mountain that dominates the horizon. For years, every decision revolves around reaching its summit. You sacrifice weekends. You endure storms. You ignore distractions because one vision pulls you forward. Finally, after countless struggles, you reach the top. The air is clear. The view is magnificent. For a few unforgettable moments, everything feels complete. Then something unexpected happens. Your eyes notice another mountain rising far beyond the first. Higher. Older. More mysterious. The first mountain gave you perspective. The second gives you purpose. Life unfolds in much the same way. Every fulfilled desire reveals a deeper question that was hidden behind it all along. Many people spend decades believing that external success will permanently quiet the restlessness within. Sometimes success does bring relief. Bills are paid. Opportunities multiply. Fear loosens its grip. These are meaningful victories. They deserve to be celebrated. But relief is not the same as awakening. A comfortable life can remove many forms of suffering. It cannot answer why we exist. It cannot tell us what kind of person we should become. It cannot explain why some individuals possess everything they once desired yet still feel as though an invisible piece of their life remains missing. The answer is rarely found in acquiring more. It is found in becoming more conscious. The universe seems to have designed human growth in stages. First, we learn how to survive. Then we learn how to succeed. Eventually, if we are fortunate enough, we begin learning how to understand ourselves. Many people never reach this third journey. Not because it is hidden. Because the noise of the first two journeys never becomes quiet enough for them to hear its invitation. Survival shouts. Success applauds. Wisdom whispers. Only a still mind can hear whispers. There is another misunderstanding that quietly shapes modern culture. We often mistake admiration for fulfillment. Millions devote their lives to becoming impressive. Far fewer devote themselves to becoming inwardly free. One pursuit depends upon the opinions of strangers. The other depends upon the quality of your own awareness. One can disappear overnight. The other cannot be taken away. This difference is subtle, but it changes everything. Consider the construction of a great observatory. From the outside, people admire its beautiful architecture, its towering dome, its polished stone, its elegant design. Yet none of those features matter if the telescope inside points in the wrong direction. The instrument may be extraordinary. Its conclusions will still be mistaken. Human life follows the same principle. An impressive career cannot compensate for confused perception. Financial prosperity cannot replace inner clarity. Recognition cannot substitute for self-understanding. The direction of consciousness matters more than the decoration of identity. This does not mean we should reject prosperity or ambition. Far from it. A flourishing society creates possibilities that constant scarcity cannot. Education expands. Creativity increases. Health improves. People gain the freedom to ask questions that survival never allowed them to ask. Security creates space. What fills that space depends entirely on awareness. Some fill it with endless consumption. Others fill it with endless comparison. A few begin asking questions that no purchase can answer. Who am I beneath my achievements? What remains when titles disappear? What kind of life leaves the heart lighter instead of merely busier? These questions are not signs of dissatisfaction. They are signs of evolution. History often remembers revolutions that changed governments. Yet the quieter revolutions reshaped civilizations. Every major cultural transformation begins inside invisible conversations taking place within ordinary people. A father deciding to raise his children differently. A young woman refusing to measure her worth by public approval. An entrepreneur choosing integrity over immediate profit. A teacher awakening curiosity instead of demanding obedience. No headlines announce these moments. Still, they alter the future. Every lasting transformation begins as an inner decision long before it becomes an outer event. Perhaps this explains why periods of comfort often produce unexpected restlessness. Not because comfort is wrong. Because comfort eventually removes the excuses that once distracted us. When survival no longer consumes every hour, consciousness asks for something deeper. It asks for beauty. For wisdom. For connection. For truth. It asks to understand the mysterious intelligence that breathes through every living thing. And once those questions awaken, they rarely fall asleep again. You may have noticed this in your own life. There were seasons when you believed one achievement would finally complete you. Then, after reaching it, you felt grateful. But not finished. That feeling is not failure. It is an invitation. The next chapter of your life is not asking you to accumulate more. It is asking you to see more clearly. And seeing clearly requires something modern life rarely encourages. Not more information. Not louder opinions. But a different quality of attention. Because hidden beneath every belief you have ever accepted, there may be an assumption you have never examined. And the moment you discover it, your understanding of yourself and of reality may begin to change in ways you cannot yet imagine. That invisible doorway awaits us in the next chapter. Chapter 4. The Courage to Think. There is a question so uncomfortable that most people spend their entire lives avoiding it. Is the prison around you, or inside you? Most of us imagine that freedom arrives the moment someone removes our chains. But what if the strongest chains were never made of iron? What if they were woven from inherited beliefs? Unquestioned assumptions. Familiar identities. And comforting certainties that we have mistaken for truth? This possibility changes everything. Because the greatest prison is the one that feels like home. Imagine walking through an enormous city at dawn. From above, the streets appear alive with movement. Thousands of people are heading somewhere with confidence. Every road seems certain. Every traveler appears convinced they have chosen the correct direction. But look closer. Very few people ever stop to ask a more important question. Who drew the map I am following? That question is dangerous. Not because it destroys life. Because it transforms it. Most people inherit their maps long before they are old enough to question them. A family hands them one. A culture hands them another. Schools, media, traditions, political tribes, successful celebrities, social media algorithms, and respected experts each add another layer. None of these are necessarily wrong. But none of them should become a substitute for seeing with your own eyes. A borrowed map may help you begin the journey. It should never become permission to stop exploring. There is an invisible difference between knowledge and certainty. Knowledge remains curious. Certainty stops listening. Knowledge asks, what else might be true? Certainty declares, the search is over. That single difference determines whether a mind continues growing or slowly begins to harden. Have you ever noticed what happens to flowing water? Because it keeps moving, it stays fresh. Now compare it to a forgotten pond hidden behind dense trees. Nothing enters. Nothing leaves. Eventually the water becomes still, then stagnant. Ideas behave the same way. When they continue meeting new experiences, they remain alive. When they are protected from every challenge, they slowly become lifeless traditions repeated without understanding. The tragedy is that people often mistake repetition for wisdom. Modern society encourages us to choose sides. Everything is divided into teams. Political teams, economic teams, religious teams, cultural teams. Even personal identity has become another competition. The moment someone joins a tribe, something subtle begins to happen. The need to understand quietly gives way to the need to defend. Questions become uncomfortable. Agreement becomes a requirement. Curiosity slowly disappears. Yet this is where the story becomes truly fascinating. The universe does not seem interested in our labels. Reality remains unchanged by the names we give it. Gravity works for everyone. The sunrise belongs to everyone. Love cannot be monopolized. Truth does not ask for membership cards. A wise architect never falls in love with a blueprint. Blueprints exist to serve the building. If reality demands adjustment, the blueprint changes. Only an inexperienced builder insists that the drawing is more important than the structure itself. Human beings often reverse this relationship. We protect our ideas even when reality gently asks us to revise them. We defend conclusions that no longer fit the evidence. Not because they are true. Because they have become part of who we believe ourselves to be. The mind whispers, if this belief falls apart, perhaps I fall apart too. But identity built upon rigid certainty is remarkably fragile. True confidence does not fear new information. It welcomes it. The healthiest mind is not one that possesses all the answers. It is one that has developed the capacity to meet new questions without panic. Think of an experienced sailor crossing unfamiliar oceans. He does not demand that the sea remain calm. He learns how to navigate changing winds. He trusts his ability to respond rather than his ability to predict. Life asks the same of us. No philosophy can anticipate every challenge. No ideology can answer every future question. No book, not even this one, should become a substitute for your own direct observation. Books can point. Only awareness can see. Perhaps this is why genuine wisdom rarely creates followers in the ordinary sense. It creates explorers. A follower asks, tell me what to think. An explorer asks, teach me how to observe. The difference appears small. Its consequences shape entire civilizations. One produces dependency. The other produces maturity. One creates imitation. The other awakens intelligence. Real teachers do not wish to occupy the center of your life. They quietly encourage you to discover your own center. And when that happens, something remarkable unfolds. Respect no longer becomes blind obedience. It becomes appreciation without surrendering independent thought. There is another misunderstanding that has quietly traveled through history. Many people believe that order is the opposite of questioning. It is not. There are two kinds of order. One is imposed from the outside. It demands conformity. It fears uncertainty. The other grows naturally from understanding. It does not require force because clarity has already transformed behavior. Consider a forest. No committee instructs every tree when to bloom. No central authority orders rivers toward the ocean. Yet a profound harmony emerges because every part participates in a larger intelligence. Living systems remain alive because they adapt. The moment they become incapable of adaptation, decline begins. Human societies are no different. A civilization that loses its ability to question eventually loses its ability to evolve. Perhaps that is why periods of uncertainty should not always frighten us. Sometimes confusion is simply the mind reorganizing itself. When old assumptions collapse, it can feel like standing in darkness. Yet every explorer knows that the darkness before dawn is not evidence that the sun has disappeared. It is evidence that a new horizon is approaching. Growth often begins as disorientation. Not because we are becoming lost, but because we are finally leaving familiar territory. Before we continue, there is one final mystery we must examine. If independent thinking is so essential, why do so many intelligent people still surrender their judgment to crowds, charismatic leaders, fashionable opinions, or the comforting certainty of belonging? The answer lies far deeper than education. It reaches into one of the oldest needs carried by every human heart: the need to feel safe. And until we understand how that need quietly shapes our beliefs, we will mistake borrowed certainty for genuine wisdom. That is the journey awaiting us in the next chapter. Chapter 5. The Fire Beneath the Ashes. Not every truth disappears when it is forgotten. Some truths simply become quiet. Like seeds buried beneath a winter landscape, they wait not for permission, but for the right season. This is one of history's least understood mysteries. People often imagine that ideas are defeated through argument. Rarely. More often, they are buried beneath habit. A culture does not silence an uncomfortable question by proving it wrong. It silences it by teaching generation after generation not to ask it. And eventually, the silence begins to feel natural. That is how invisible prisons are built. Not with chains. With inherited certainty. Picture an ancient observatory abandoned for centuries. Its telescopes are covered in dust. Its stone walls are cracked by rain and time. Travelers pass by every day without entering. Many assume there was never anything valuable inside. After all, if it mattered, surely everyone would still be talking about it. But one curious explorer decides to push open the heavy wooden door. Inside, beneath years of neglect, he discovers instruments capable of revealing entire galaxies. The stars had never disappeared. Only the willingness to look had. Human wisdom follows the same pattern. Entire ways of seeing reality can remain hidden not because they lack value, but because attention has wandered elsewhere. Every civilization inherits treasures. It also inherits blind spots. Wisdom does not belong exclusively to one nation, one century, one language, or one tradition. The universe scatters insight across humanity like constellations across the night sky. No single observer sees every star. When a culture begins believing it already possesses all the answers, something subtle happens. Its curiosity begins to fade. The search slows. Questions become inconvenient. The unknown is replaced by the familiar. At first, this feels like confidence. Eventually, it becomes stagnation. There is a profound difference between honoring the past and living inside it. Imagine an architect restoring a magnificent old bridge. She studies every stone with respect. She learns from the original builders. Yet when new materials can make the bridge stronger, she does not refuse them simply because they are new. Respect is not imitation. It is intelligent continuation. The same principle applies to human understanding. Our ancestors gave us extraordinary insights. They also left unanswered questions. To honor them is not to freeze their discoveries in time. It is to continue the exploration they began. This is where many sincere seekers become trapped. They confuse loyalty with repetition. They believe questioning an inherited belief somehow dishonors those who came before them. But genuine pioneers never wanted obedient imitators. They wanted fearless explorers. Every remarkable breakthrough in history began with someone willing to ask, "What have we overlooked?" Not out of arrogance. Out of love for truth. The most dangerous sentence in any age is not, "This is wrong." It is, "This cannot be questioned." The moment a belief becomes untouchable, learning quietly comes to an end. Growth requires movement. Movement requires uncertainty. And uncertainty requires courage. This is why independent thought is often uncomfortable. It asks us to release conclusions that once gave us security. It invites us into landscapes without familiar maps. At first, that feels like losing something. In reality, it is the beginning of discovering something much greater. Modern life offers an endless supply of opinions. Algorithms deliver them every second. Commentators explain the world before we have experienced it ourselves. Communities reward agreement and punish hesitation. The temptation is understandable. Borrowing certainty is easier than cultivating understanding. But borrowed certainty carries an invisible cost. It weakens our ability to observe directly. Gradually, we stop seeing reality. We begin seeing only our interpretations of reality. There is a vast difference between the two. Imagine standing beside a river at sunrise. One person immediately describes the water using words they memorized years ago. Another stands silently, watching the reflections shift with every passing cloud. Who is closer to the river? The one carrying better descriptions? Or the one who is actually looking? This is the difference between accumulated knowledge and living awareness. Knowledge has tremendous value. But awareness breathes life into knowledge. Without awareness, even wisdom becomes another collection of lifeless words. Perhaps this explains why genuine transformation always feels deeply personal. No one can observe on your behalf. No one can become conscious for you. Another person's experience may inspire you. It cannot replace your own. Eventually, every seeker arrives at the same invisible doorway. The door where inherited answers become insufficient. The door where second-hand certainty no longer satisfies. The door where a new question quietly appears. What is true not because someone told me, but because I have seen it for myself? Crossing that threshold is both frightening and liberating. Because from that moment onward, your life is no longer guided by borrowed conclusions. It is guided by direct experience. And yet, one final obstacle remains. Even after we become willing to question old ideas, another force continues pulling us back toward familiarity. It is older than philosophy. Older than civilization. Older, perhaps, than language itself. It is the ancient human desire to belong. Until we understand how the need for acceptance quietly shapes what we believe, we will continue mistaking social approval for truth. And that invisible force is where our journey leads next. Chapter 6. The stories we choose to remember. Every civilization tells stories about itself. Some stories illuminate. Others comfort. A few quietly imprison. The remarkable thing is that most people never notice the difference. We inherit narratives the way children inherit family photographs. We grow up surrounded by them. They explain who we are, where we came from, and why the world looks the way it does. Because they arrive before our questions do, they often feel indistinguishable from reality itself. Yet this is where the journey takes an unexpected turn. A story can preserve wisdom. A story can also preserve illusion. Learning to distinguish between the two is one of the greatest responsibilities of an awakened mind. Imagine an ancient city hidden beneath layers of sand. For centuries, travelers walk across the desert believing there is nothing beneath their feet. Maps are drawn. Roads are built. Generations are born and die without suspecting that an entire civilization sleeps only a few feet below them. Then one curious explorer notices a single carved stone emerging from the ground. He begins digging. At first, people laugh. There is nothing there. Then a wall appears. Days later, a staircase. Months later, an entire city rises into the light. The city did not suddenly come into existence. It had been waiting beneath forgotten layers all along. Human understanding unfolds in exactly the same way. Much of what shapes our lives remains buried not because it never existed, but because no one has looked deeply enough. One of the quietest forms of courage is the willingness to re-examine what we have always assumed to be true. Not with hostility. Not with blind skepticism. But with sincere curiosity. Curiosity does not begin by asking, "Who was right?" It begins by asking, "What have we overlooked?" Those are profoundly different questions. The first seeks victory. The second seeks understanding. Only one of them leads to wisdom. History is often imagined as a collection of finished events. In reality, history is an ongoing conversation between evidence, memory, interpretation, and perspective. Every generation discovers new documents, new archaeological findings, new scientific methods, new ways of understanding old events. This does not mean everything we believed was false. Nor does it mean everything we inherited was complete. Reality is usually more subtle than certainty allows. The mature mind can hold respect for the past while remaining open to new discoveries. It does not fear revision, because its loyalty is to truth, not to comfort. There is another misunderstanding that quietly limits human growth. Many people believe questioning a familiar narrative is an act of disrespect. In reality, honest inquiry is often the highest form of respect. A scientist honors nature by continuing to investigate it. An artist honors beauty by discovering new ways to express it. An explorer honors the horizon by refusing to believe every map is final. Why should our understanding of ourselves be any different? The universe has never stopped unfolding. Why should our curiosity? Unfortunately, certainty possesses an unusual attraction. It feels safe. It reduces complexity. It gives the comforting impression that every important question has already been answered. But life refuses to remain inside finished conclusions. New challenges emerge. New technologies reshape society. New generations ask questions that previous generations never imagined. A rigid worldview eventually begins colliding with a changing reality. When that happens, two paths appear. One path defends old answers at any cost. The other develops deeper questions. Only one of those paths remains alive. Think about the way a forest survives across centuries. No single tree dictates how every future season must unfold. Each generation adapts. Roots grow around new rocks. Branches bend toward new light. Seeds travel into landscapes previous forests never knew existed. The forest remains recognizable precisely because it continues changing. Human wisdom follows the same rhythm. Its deepest principles endure. Its expressions evolve. Confusing these two creates endless conflict. Perhaps the greatest danger facing any culture is not forgetting its past. It is believing its past can never be examined again. The moment inquiry becomes unwelcome, imagination begins to shrink. When imagination shrinks, innovation slows. When innovation slows, civilizations gradually begin living on yesterday's discoveries. History offers many examples of societies that became guardians of memory instead of creators of possibility. The lesson is timeless. Respect yesterday. But do not allow yesterday to become the ceiling of tomorrow. Modern life presents a different challenge. Information has become abundant. Understanding has become scarce. Millions of voices compete for attention every hour. Opinions travel faster than evidence. Emotion often outruns reflection. In such a world, independent thinking becomes more valuable than ever. Not because independent thinkers always arrive at the correct answer, but because they continue asking better questions. And better questions eventually lead humanity toward better answers. Perhaps that is the true purpose of this journey. Not to replace one certainty with another. Not to persuade you to exchange one belief system for a different one. But to strengthen something far more important. Your capacity to observe. To think. To revise. To remain intellectually humble even while passionately searching for truth. Because truth has nothing to fear from honest investigation. Only illusion asks never to be questioned. As we move forward, another mystery quietly emerges. If human beings possess such extraordinary intelligence, why do intelligent people still cling to comforting stories even after evidence begins pointing elsewhere? The answer does not lie in education alone. It lies in something far older than logic. It lives in emotion, in identity, in the silent need to belong. And until we understand that hidden force, we will continue defending ideas not because they are true, but because they have become part of who we believe ourselves to be. That invisible attachment is where our next chapter begins. Chapter 7. The garden must be pruned. There is a misunderstanding that has quietly shaped human history. Most people believe that creation begins with building. It does not. Creation begins with making space. A sculptor does not begin by adding marble. He begins by removing it. A gardener does not create a flourishing orchard by endlessly planting new seeds while refusing to trim dead branches. Before life can expand, something no longer alive must be released. This truth is uncomfortable. Because the human mind loves collecting ideas, achievements, titles, traditions, beliefs. We gather them throughout our lives as though wisdom were measured by accumulation. Very few people learn the equally sacred art of letting go. And yet, every meaningful transformation begins there. Imagine entering an old library that has stood untouched for centuries. Its shelves stretch from floor to ceiling. Thousands upon thousands of books fill every corner. At first glance, it seems magnificent. But as you begin searching for a single volume, you discover something surprising. Most of the shelves are filled with duplicate copies. Outdated manuals. Broken catalogs. Books no one has opened in generations. The knowledge is buried beneath unnecessary weight. The library does not need more books. It needs clarity. The human mind is remarkably similar. Many of our thoughts are not original discoveries. They are inherited conclusions repeated so often that they now sound like our own voice. Until we learn to distinguish direct experience from borrowed opinion, inner freedom remains impossible. This is why genuine education is far more than the transfer of information. Information fills memory. Education awakens perception. One teaches us what others have discovered. The other teaches us how to discover. These are not the same gift. The first prepares us for yesterday. The second prepares us for tomorrow. In an age where information is available within seconds, the greatest shortage is no longer knowledge. It is the ability to think independently, to observe patiently, to remain curious when certainty feels easier. Perhaps the highest purpose of learning is not to produce agreement. Perhaps it is to produce awareness. There is another illusion that quietly shapes modern culture. We celebrate certainty. We reward confidence. We admire people who always appear to have immediate answers. Yet reality is rarely so simple. The greatest explorers of every age shared one remarkable quality. They were comfortable saying, "I don't know yet." Those 3 words have launched more discoveries than certainty ever has. Every scientific breakthrough began as an unanswered question. Every meaningful invention emerged because someone refused to accept that the current explanation was final. The universe seems to reward curiosity more generously than certainty. Consider the renovation of an ancient cathedral. If its foundation begins to crack, painting the walls accomplishes nothing. The stained glass may become more beautiful. The architecture may appear flawless. Yet the structure continues weakening beneath the surface. Many lives are lived exactly this way. People decorate their routines without examining the assumptions supporting them. They improve productivity while neglecting purpose. They refine appearance while ignoring awareness. They chase recognition while forgetting to ask whether they are becoming the person they truly wish to be. Real renewal begins below the surface. Not because appearances are unimportant. Because foundations determine how long beauty can endure. The same principle applies to society itself. Healthy cultures are not those that preserve every custom unchanged. Healthy cultures preserve what continues giving life while courageously releasing what no longer serves human flourishing. This requires wisdom. Not rebellion for its own sake. Not destruction motivated by anger. But thoughtful renewal born from understanding. A forest survives because old trees eventually return to the soil, making room for younger growth. Without that cycle, even the healthiest ecosystem slowly loses its vitality. Renewal is not the enemy of tradition. It is what allows the deepest values to remain alive across generations. Many people fear change because they imagine every ending is a loss. Nature tells a different story. Autumn appears to be an ending. In reality, it is preparation. Leaves fall not because the tree has failed, but because it is conserving energy for a greater spring. The tree never mistakes holding on for wisdom. Only human beings often do. How much unnecessary suffering comes from refusing to release identities that no longer fit us? How many relationships remain trapped inside conversations that ended years ago? How many dreams survive only because we are afraid to admit they no longer belong to the person we have become? Sometimes growth requires addition. More often, it requires honest subtraction. This is not a call to reject everything old. It is an invitation to examine everything carefully. Keep what deepens compassion. Keep what strengthens integrity. Keep what expands awareness. Keep what helps human beings become more fully alive. But do not preserve an idea merely because it has existed for a long time. Age alone is not evidence of wisdom. Nor is novelty evidence of progress. Only direct experience, thoughtful inquiry, and lived understanding can reveal the difference. There is one final lesson hidden within every act of genuine renewal. Courage is indivisible. The same courage required to question an old belief becomes the courage required to create a better future. The same heart that can release illusion can also embrace possibility. This is why transformation never belongs exclusively to destruction or creation. It belongs to both. One clears the field. The other plants the seed. Without the first, the second struggles to grow. Without the second, the first has no purpose. Together they become the rhythm through which both individuals and civilizations renew themselves. And yet, the deepest obstacle has still not been revealed. If human beings possess the capacity to question, to learn, and to transform, why do we so often resist the very changes that could liberate us? The answer has little to do with intelligence. It has everything to do with identity. For before we release an old belief, we must first face a far more frightening possibility. Who are we without the story we have spent a lifetime calling ourselves? That question marks the beginning of the next stage of our journey. Epilogue. If you have reached this moment, something has already changed. Perhaps not dramatically. Perhaps no lightning struck the sky. No invisible voice whispered secret answers. No miraculous revelation suddenly erased every doubt. Real transformation rarely arrives that way. Instead, it enters quietly. Like dawn slipping across a sleeping landscape. At first, almost nothing appears different. Then, little by little, the entire world is illuminated. That is how awareness works. When this journey began, you may have expected to discover new ideas. Instead, I hope you discovered something far more valuable. A new way of seeing. Ideas come and go. Theories evolve. Cultures change. Technologies reshape civilization. Even the greatest philosophies eventually become chapters in humanity's ongoing story. But a mind that has learned how to observe, a heart that has learned how to question, a consciousness that has learned how to remain awake, those are treasures no changing world can take away. Perhaps you noticed that this book never asked you to replace one belief with another. That was intentional. The goal was never agreement. Agreement creates followers. Understanding creates free human beings. There is a profound difference. Followers borrow certainty. Free minds cultivate awareness. Followers search for someone to lead them. Free minds learn how to walk with open eyes. Followers defend conclusions. Free minds continue exploring. The universe has no need for more unquestioning believers. It quietly waits for more conscious observers. As you leave these pages, resist one final temptation. Do not turn this audiobook into another collection of beautiful ideas. Do not quote it merely to sound wiser. Do not memorize its sentences while forgetting its invitation. Instead, live the questions. Notice how your mind reacts when someone disagrees with you. Watch how quickly fear asks for certainty. Observe how easily your identity clings to familiar stories. Pay attention to the moments when you defend an opinion before understanding another perspective. Those ordinary moments are where awakening either continues or quietly falls asleep again. The real classroom has never been these pages. It has always been your everyday life. One day, perhaps months from now, something unexpected will happen. You will find yourself in a difficult conversation, or standing at the edge of an important decision, or facing uncertainty that once would have filled you with anxiety. Without realizing it, you will pause. You will observe instead of reacting. You will become curious instead of defensive. You will choose understanding over certainty. And only afterward will you recognize what changed. The transformation was never loud. It became your nature. That is how genuine growth always reveals itself. There is another realization waiting for you. You may never reach a point where every question is answered. And that is not failure. It is freedom. The most awakened people are not those who possess the largest collection of answers. They are those who have become comfortable walking beside mystery without demanding immediate certainty. They understand that every answer opens the door to a deeper question. Every discovery reveals a larger horizon. Every summit uncovers another mountain waiting in the distance. Life is not a puzzle to be finished. It is an adventure to be continually explored. You may also notice that your relationship with others begins to change. When you no longer need to be right, conversations become richer. When you stop defending your identity, listening becomes easier. When curiosity replaces judgment, compassion naturally grows. The people around you may not immediately understand this change. Some will mistake openness for uncertainty. Others may confuse quiet confidence with weakness. Let them. The strongest trees make no effort to convince the forest of their strength. They simply continue growing. There is one final illusion worth leaving behind. The belief that awakening belongs to extraordinary people. It does not. It belongs to ordinary people who choose extraordinary honesty. To the parent willing to admit, "I may be wrong." To the entrepreneur who values integrity more than applause. To the teacher who encourages questions instead of obedience. To the friend who listens before speaking. To the young person courageous enough to think independently. To the older person humble enough to keep learning. Awareness is not reserved for the exceptional. It becomes available the moment sincerity becomes more important than ego. And now, before we part, I want to leave you with a question. Not one to answer today. Perhaps not even this year. Simply carry it with you. Allow it to quietly accompany your life. Whenever fear asks you to cling. Whenever pride asks you to defend. Whenever comfort asks you to stop growing. Pause. Take one slow breath. And ask yourself, am I responding from inherited certainty, or from direct awareness? If you continue asking that single question with honesty, it will become more than a question. It will become a compass. And unlike borrowed beliefs, a true compass never tells you where to stand. It simply reminds you how to find your own direction. So this is not goodbye. Because journeys of consciousness never truly end. This final page is not an ending. It is the quiet moment when the guide steps aside, and your own awareness takes the lead. The chapters are complete. The real book begins now. The next page is your life. Write it consciously.